Hello everybody and welcome to the British Pint. My name is Christoph and today we're cloning Guinness Draught. This is a very challenging beer and there are not many information out there, so it's going to be the first beer I'm actually going to clone by reverse engineering and trying to match the flavor instead of going after historical recipes. There is lots of information about the Guinness Extra Stout, the old traditional, they now call it original beer from Guinness. And I got both of these from cans, so I can actually explain to you how I got to the mix of ingredients that I thought of. When you pour both, then you will notice that even though both cans contain the same amount of liquid, the one pours with a lot more foam, just really tons of foam. Now, it might be carbonated differently and it doesn't have the nitrogen capsule, but I believe that the classical recipe that we know for Guinness Extra Stout, which is well known, which is 70% pale malt, 20% flake barley, and 10% roasted barley, which gives us a very intense, astringent bitterness. That is actually going to have to change. We have to reduce the amount of flake barley, we have to reduce the amount of roasted barley. Both will bring down the amount of foam that is produced, and then we get something that is closer to Guinness Draught. Now, Guinness Draught is served with nitrogen, and what you can do is serve it from a hand pump with a sparkler. And I already tested that. I did one test beer before, trying to see how close I get with the flavor, and so now I can do the fine-tuning and show you what recipe I came up with. Yeah, I can show you a video of how this pours from a sparkler. This is really amazing, great flavor. You can see the tiny bubbles, just similar to nitrogen, but the big disadvantage of nitrogen is that it suppresses any hop aromas, and so with sparkler you get a much more complex flavor profile that you can still taste. Alright, so what kind of ingredients do we need for Guinness Draught? Now, as I said, I want to go down with the amount of roasted barley, and what I'm going to use instead is black malt. I have crisp black malt here, that is going to be just fine, I think. Black malt is darker than the German roasted barley I'm used to, and I believe some British roasted barleys as well. I used German roasted barley in my first attempt, but I just now got roasted barley from Warminster a few minutes ago via post, so I'm going to use this one. It's significantly darker than the German roasted barley, so instead of 1100 or something like that, rather 1500 EBC. That's significant. So I'm going to see how this tastes. Maybe I could do a flavor comparison of these two, but I like to eat some of the malts just directly when they're crushed, but these are so dark and bitter, it's really not pleasant to do that, so I have to see what I can do. Okay, so my pale malt, usually in Ireland they're using stout malt, which is very pale malt that is supposed to have lots of enzymes so that it is easier to convert the high amount of adjuncts that are used. So I'm just using pale malt because I like the flavor more than Pilsen malt, lager malt, whatever you could use as substitute. This is Viking pale malt. It doesn't matter really which malt star, I like all the pale malts. You could go for Maris Otter low color if you want to be more accurate with the color, but a bit more character. Depends on really what you want to go for. For an accurate clone, I think you could go for Pilsen malt, which I'm not going to do, but it won't matter that much. What is going to matter is the amount of flake barley. I'm going to use 10% in mine, just half the percentage that is used in the extra stout, and then I'm going to use 5% of black malt and 3% of roasted barley. And I tried this before with where I forgot the flake barley, so it was not as much foam as I would like to, but I did get exactly the roast profile that I get from a can of Guinness. The cans in Germany have 4.2% ABV, but in the UK they have 4.1% ABV of Guinness Draught. So I know that there are regional variations with that, and I'm not sure how they will basically affect the flavor profile. So you will have to check that on your own. So feel free to copy this recipe and then see how you continue. Regarding the bitterness, Guinness Extra Stout has 45 IBUs, and my test beer was 45 IBUs as well, far too bitter. Now, I was made aware of analyses that are in the book Porter by Ron Pattinson, and they give quite a lower color, 134 EBC, compared to the over 200 EBC that you get from the Extra Stout, and they also give a bitterness that is 34 IBU, so that's less. I'm going to reduce my bitterness as well. I'm using Admiral as the bitterness hops, once because I have it here, and the other one is because you want to have something that's very clean, without any grassiness, just minimum hop usage. And also, I think I used 6 grams for my small amount. I'm brewing 4.5 liters again, as always. and I'm going down to 4 grams this time. So this should reduce the bitterness quite a lot, and I think that is going to be better for Guinness Draught. It's very clean finish. Now you have to remember that if you use a sparkler or just anything except for nitrogen, a lot of the bitterness is going to go into the foam. So I think with nitrogen that might not be the case, because the iso alpha acids are only soluble in CO2. But with the sparkler it definitely is the case. The more foam you create, the less bitterness is left in the beer. Just a second, I have to look after my daughter. Alright, back to business. So the next part is then the yeast. Now, Irish ale from many manufacturers is always the same strain. It's always the Guinness strain. This is Yeast 1084. You can use whichever you like. I have used this strain before in the form of Imperial Yeast Darkness, and I know that this yeast doesn't precipitate very well, which makes everything a bit more troublesome. Now, what I found out recently is that, first of all, yeast precipitates more easily if there's no chill haze. So if you keep the beer cold and want to get it into condition, like at 12 degrees or something, and you have a chill haze, the yeast particles will cling onto that. So a very clear beer, crystal clear beer, helps get the yeast precipitated. My first test beer that I did with this yeast a couple of months back was with the German-grown Chevalier that I use, which is badly modified and creates a ton of chill haze. That beer didn't clear even after 3 weeks at 12 degrees and then another 2 weeks at 4 degrees. Just didn't work at all. Now, the test beer of the Guinness Draught that I did just recently, there I used a protein rest at 60 degrees, which is only focusing on the very long chains that create chill haze of protein. And that worked like a charm, 15 minutes at 60 degrees, and the beer is crystal clear, and the yeast precipitates within 2 weeks at 12 degrees very easily. So I'm going to do that again this time. So my mashing scheme is actually going to be 50, I want to shorten it to 10 minutes just to see if that's enough. Don't want to do too much. 10 minutes at 60 degrees, and then an hour at 67 to get the driest beer. 67 degrees creates a drier beer than 63, 64, 65, because you have a bit of activity from both enzymes, and that creates better breakdown of some very complex sugar molecules. So that is the mashing scheme. The yeast I have used at 20 degrees without tasting too much ester development, and at 21 degrees in the Guinness Draught clone, the number 1. And there I got a bit of that fruity esters that you can find in Guinness Draught. In my opinion, especially if you get used to the very roasty flavor, you notice some apricot, peachy flavors, fruit flavors in there. And while I don't think that the fruit flavors I got at 21 degrees are exactly the same, I think they are very close. I tasted a Guinness Draught can yesterday, and I think there might be an aroma hop in there, but I'm not too sure, and I have no idea what I would use. So I'm not going to go down that road. I'm going to ferment again at 21 degrees Celsius. That is giving me esters in a way that I like them. Just perfect. If you want, you could go for lower pitching, but because I don't have a proper fermentation control, I'm not going to do that, just going to have constant temperature. Okay, with that, I think we have the recipe pinned down. I would say we see each other again during the pitching. This yeast that also arrived just a few minutes ago together with roasted barley was on offer because it's past the best before date, and so it will be a bit weaker. I might use half of this amount for my 4.5 liters. Usually even less than half would be completely sufficient, and you want to have a lower pitching rate if you want to create a few esters for fruitiness. So yeah, I'm just going to go with exactly half of what is in there. Use the other half for another stout. I want to do more stouts in the future. I have seen Brewdog Black Heart in a British supermarket, which tasted really good. Going to try to clone that one. And then also I really like from the book Brew Your Own British Wheat Ale, the Brewdog Top Dog Stout, which is also really nice. Going to do that afterwards with very fruity yeast. So we'll see how that will turn out. Until then, I would say we see each other for the pitching, pretty sure. I'm going to show you all the clips of what I do with the brewing. Oh, forgot the water, sorry, I keep forgetting the water regularly. With my small amount of beer that I brew, I always mash in with 4 liters and spart with 3 liters. I have prepared water yesterday. I boiled it so that the chalk precipitates, added a bit of calcium chloride just to boost the profile, which my water is poor in chloride but high in sulfate, so I want to have it more balanced. Yeah, I will show the profile on the screen so you see what you're up to. You can copy that one, you can do your own one. I just try to edit it, change the water somewhat, then I get a decent mash pH, which is around 5.4 in this case. Alright, so I will see you later. Bye bye. Alright, here we are. We have our lovely wort. Yeah, not yet beer, not yet green beer. Our lovely wort. It's foaming a lot, which is a good sign. Something that was surprising me though is that I didn't get any protein break. It didn't look like anything really flocculated. I have had beers where you had thick pieces of protein in there. This one just had a bit on top, you know, a bit of muck, but not much else. Maybe it is because of the 10-minute protein rest. I think it wasn't like that the last time I used 50 minutes. We'll see how the result is. It definitely has some stuff in there which creates foam, because you can see how intense that is. Car passed by. Alright, so I have my yeast here. It did inflate a bit. I smacked it just before the filming started. So as I said, the package arrived just minutes before that. Let's open that one. I disinfected it a second ago with alcohol, because that's what they tell you to do. And I really hate these package openings because, well, not too bad. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, as I said, is I'm going to pour half of it. I think I just shook this before I started recording. I think so. I'm going to put half of it in here, half of it into a sterile container, and then we're going to be fine for the fermentation, I think. Whoops. Okay, that should be quite right. Just don't want to pour anything on the edges, because that can actually be quite a problem. So I'll write the original gravity that I got up on the screen. I wanted to get 1042, yeah, 10.5 degree Plato, which is 1042, because 1042 under normal conditions usually ferments to 4.2% ABV, and that is what I want to match here. Okay, lovely. So I'm going to shake this a bit more, put the bung on top. Today was a really hot day here, even though most of July and August have so far been really wet and cold. But today it was 30 degrees outside, and it makes everything a bit more difficult. I might have to go into the basement with this one, just to make sure it stays in a decent temperature range. I'll let you know what the fermentation temperature is, as always, on that video clip that I show of the fermentation. Alright? So see you around for the tasting. Don't miss that. It's always the next video after this one. And see you then. Bye-bye.